The envelope slipped from my fingers like a confession I wasn't ready to make, tumbling into the storm drain with a wet slap that echoed louder than the thunder cracking overhead. Rain poured down in sheets, blurring the neon sign of the all-night diner across the street, but nothing could wash away the words I'd just read. I see you, Alex. More than you know. And it terrifies me. My heart hammered as I realized the handwriting, elegant loops and precise angles, was the same as the anonymous notes tucked into my library books for months, the ones that peeled back my carefully guarded life layer by layer. Who the hell was watching me close enough to know I cried myself to sleep after my father's funeral, or that I'd kissed a boy in high school and buried the memory under years of pretending? I bolted from the curb, shoes splashing through puddles that mirrored the fractured streetlights of downtown Chicago, the windy city living up to its name as gusts whipped my jacket around me like accusatory fingers. My name is Alex Rivera, 28 years old, a graphic designer scraping by in a cramped Wicker Park apartment, the kind of place where the walls are thin enough to hear your neighbors' arguments, but thick enough to hide your own. I'd come out to my family 5 years ago, a quiet dinner in our old Evanston suburb where Mom hugged me tighter than usual and Dad stared at his plate like it held the secrets of the universe. But secrets? I had plenty left, like how I'd ghosted my best friend Jamie after she confessed her crush on me in college, or the way I'd lied to my therapist about still feeling like an imposter in my own skin. Those library notes started 6 months back, innocuous at first. A quote from Whitman slipped into my dog-eared copy of The Great Gatsby. Something about carrying the news of the soul. Then they got personal. Too personal. The boy in the photo you hide under your mattress isn't a phase, Alex. He's a beginning. I'd burned that one in my sink, the smoke curling up like guilt. By the time I shoved through the glass doors of the Harold Washington Library the next morning, my eyes burned from lack of sleep and the cheap coffee sloshing in my gut. The place was a cathedral of knowledge, all marble floors and towering stacks that smelled of aged paper and quiet desperation. I headed straight for the third-floor reference section, where the air was cooler and the patrons scarcer. That's when I saw him again. Elias Hart, the librarian no one noticed. Mid-20s, with hair the color of burnt chestnuts and glasses that perpetually slid down his nose. He moved like a shadow among the shelves, reshelving books with a precision that bordered on ritual. People called him Ghost Heart behind his back, the guy who volunteered endless hours but never joined the staff happy hours or the book club potlucks. I'd seen him glance my way once or twice, a flicker of something unreadable in his hazel eyes, but I always looked away first. Today, though, he was at the circulation desk, fingers flying over the keyboard as he checked in returns. Our eyes met across the room, and for a split second, the world narrowed to the space between us, the hum of the air vents fading, the distant cough of an elderly reader vanishing. He froze, then pushed his glasses up with a finger that trembled just enough to notice. I forced my legs to move, weaving through the tables until I stood before him, the stack of damp paperbacks in my arms a flimsy shield. "You dropped something yesterday," I said, my voice rougher than intended, sliding the soaked envelope across the counter. It wasn't a question, it was a gauntlet thrown. Elias's face drained of color, his Adam's apple bobbing as he swallowed. He didn't touch the envelope, just stared at it like it might bite. "I don't know what you're talking about," he murmured, but his voice cracked on the last word, betraying him. Up close, he smelled like vanilla and old ink, a scent that twisted something low in my stomach. I leaned in, close enough to see the faint freckles across his nose. "Bullshit. Your handwriting's all over this. And those notes in my books? Same deal." The library's hush amplified every syllable, drawing a few sidelong glances from nearby browsers. Elias's eyes darted to them, then back to me, wide with a panic that mirrored my own. "Please, Alex. Not here." That plea. It was the first time he'd said my name aloud, and it landed like a spark on dry tinder. How did he know it? Of course he did. The notes had used it like a weapon. I grabbed his wrist before he could pull away, feeling the rapid pulse beneath his skin. "Then where?" "Coffee. Now." He nodded, almost imperceptibly, and whispered directions to a hole-in-the-wall cafe 2 blocks over, the kind with mismatched chairs and baristas who didn't ask questions. We walked in silence, the November chill nipping at our heels as gray clouds scud overhead. Chicago's loop buzzed around us, tourists snapping pics of the bean, commuters hustling to offices, but I felt exposed, like every passerby could see the raw edges of my unraveling. Elias kept his hands shoved deep in his coat pockets, shoulders hunched against more than just the wind. The cafe was a cozy nook called the Page Turner, all exposed brick and shelves lined with dog-eared paperbacks for sale. We claimed a corner booth, steam rising from our mugs like unspoken words. "Tell me why," I demanded, once the waitress had retreated. "Why the letters? Why me?" Elias stirred his tea endlessly, the spoon clinking like a metronome to his nerves. Finally, he met my gaze, and what I saw there, raw, aching vulnerability, made my chest tighten. Because I couldn't not say something. "You come in here every Tuesday and Thursday, same time, same section. You pick books on hidden histories, on men who loved in the shadows. And your face, when you read, it's like you're seeing yourself for the first time. But then you leave, and I see the weight you carry, the way you flinch at loud voices, or how you avoid the groups in the reading room." I laughed, a bitter sound that drew a wince from him. "So you're my stalker therapist now? Writing creepy love notes disguised as poetry." His flush deepened, creeping up his neck. "They're not love notes. God, no. They're bridges. I lost my brother last year. He was like you, brilliant, guarded. Gay in a family that pretended it didn't matter until it did. He wrote me letters before he died, ones he never sent. About his fears, his dreams. I found them after, in his desk. They saved me, in a way. Made me see him, really see him. I thought, maybe I could do that for you." The words hung there, heavy as the fog rolling off Lake Michigan. Save me? From what? The loneliness that gnawed at me like a persistent ache, or the fear that loving anyone would just lead to loss. My father had died of cancer 2 years back, leaving behind a wife who baked casseroles for the neighbors, but couldn't say, "I'm proud of you, son," without choking. My mother loved me, sure, but her love came wrapped in worry, in questions about when I'd settle down. And friends? Jamie had drifted away after college, her unanswered texts a ghost in my phone. I'd dated sporadically, quick coffees that fizzled into awkward goodbyes, but no one had ever seen me like Elias claimed to. "I'm not your brother," I said softly, but there was no heat in it. Elias nodded, his eyes glistening. "I know, but you're someone who deserves to be seen." We sat like that for an hour, the conversation ebbing into safer waters, favorite authors, the best hidden gems in the library's archives. He recommended a biography on Bayard Rustin, the civil rights activist who'd orchestrated the March on Washington but stayed in the closet for decades. He fought for everyone else's freedom but not his own, Elias said, tracing the rim of his mug. Sounds familiar. By the time we parted ways, the rain had cleared, leaving the streets slick and shimmering under the afternoon sun. "Keep the letters coming," I told him at the door, surprising us both. "But sign them next time." His smile was tentative, like sunlight breaking through clouds, a promise of something fragile and real. That night, back in my apartment, I pulled out the box under my bed, faded photos, ticket stubs from concerts I'd attended alone, and that high school snapshot of me and Tyler, our arms slung around each other after a football game, grins wide and innocent. Tyler had moved away after graduation, but the memory lingered, a what-if that haunted my quieter moments. I wondered if Elias had ever had someone like that, someone who'd cracked open his world before sealing it shut again. Little did I know, the bridges he was building were about to collapse under the weight of truths neither of us was ready to bear. The first signed letter arrived 3 days later, slipped into my mailbox like a clandestine gift. "Alex," it began in that familiar script. "If you're reading this, it means you haven't burned it yet. Progress. Today, I watched you sketch in the margins of that Rustin bio, quick lines fierce. You draw the way you live, bold strokes hiding the careful shading underneath." I traced the ink with my fingertip, a shiver running through me. Elias had noticed that. The sketching was my escape. Doodles of impossible architectures, towers that defied gravity, rooms where secrets could breathe. I found myself returning to the library more often, not just Tuesdays and Thursdays, but Mondays too, lingering in the reference stacks until closing. Elias was always there, a quiet constant amid the flux of patrons. We'd exchange nods, then words, first about books, then about the city. Chicago's like a novel you can't put down, he'd say, pushing his glasses up. Layered, unpredictable, full of ghosts. I'd laugh and counter with how it felt more like a choose-your-own adventure, where one wrong turn lands you in a speakeasy or a fistfight. One evening, as snow flurried outside the windows, he invited me to the library's after-hours event, a poetry reading in the Winter Garden atrium. It's low-key, he promised over the phone, his voice warm through the static. Just voices and verses. No pressure. I hesitated, the old walls rising instinctive. Social scenes were minefields. I'd spent too many nights nursing a beer in corners, watching couples entwine while I faded into the wallpaper. But Elias's earnestness chipped at my resolve. Fine, but if it's lame, you're buying me whiskey after. The atrium was a glass-domed oasis, poinsettias blooming defiantly against the frost, strings of lights twinkling like captured stars. About 20 people milled about, academics in tweed, artists with ink-stained fingers, a few wide-eyed students clutching chapbooks. Elias stood near the podium in a cable-knit sweater that hugged his lean frame, looking less like a ghost and more like someone stepping into light. When he spotted me, his face lit up, and he wove through the crowd to hand me a steaming cider. "You came," he said, as if it were a miracle. The readings were intimate, poets bearing souls on themes of longing and loss. One woman recited a piece about unrequited love, her words weaving through the air like smoke. I loved you in the silence between heartbeats, in the spaces where words failed. I felt Elias's gaze on me, heavy with unspoken parallels. Afterward, as the group dispersed into clusters, he pulled me aside to a bench overlooking the snow-draped Grant Park. That last one. It reminded me of my brother, he admitted, his breath fogging the chill. He wrote poems like that, never shared them. I turned to him, the cider forgotten in my hand. What happened to him, Elias? If you want to tell me. His eyes shadowed, but he didn't pull away. Car accident. Drunk driver. He was 24, just starting his PhD in literature at Northwestern. We were close, best friends, really. He was the outgoing one, the charmer. I was me. He gestured vaguely at himself, self-deprecating. After, Mom and Dad threw themselves into work. Dad's a history prof, Mom's in real estate. They cleared out his room like it was contaminated. I kept the letters. They were his way of saying what he couldn't face to face. Sympathy twisted in my gut, mingling with a fierce protectiveness I'd never felt for anyone but family. That's why the notes to me. Paying it forward. He shook his head, a sad smile tugging his lips. More like paying a debt. To him. To myself. I've always been the quiet one, Alex. In high school, I had this crush on a guy in debate club. Wrote him a letter, poured everything into it. Chickened out, never sent it. He graduated, moved to California. Story of my life. The vulnerability in his voice cracked something open in me. I set the cup down and took his hand, the warmth of his palms seeping into my cold fingers. Not anymore. Send one to me. For real. Our eyes locked, and in that suspended moment, the atrium's hum receded, leaving only the soft patter of snow against glass. His thumb brushed my knuckle, tentative, electric. Then a voice shattered the bubble, an older woman from the reading, waving Elias over for cleanup duty. He squeezed my hand once before letting go, but the connection lingered, a thread pulling taut. Over the next weeks, our rhythm solidified. Letters became our language, his delivered via the library's interoffice mail, mine folded into books I returned with notes scribbled in the flyleaves. Your laugh sounds like the first page of a good mystery, I wrote once, after he cracked a joke about Hemingway's fishing obsession. He replied with a pressed four-leaf clover from the Lincoln Park Conservatory. Luck's overrated. It's the chase that counts. We met for walks along the lakefront, bundled against the wind, sharing stories that peeled back layers. I told him about Tyler, the high school kiss that ended in a hasty retreat when rumors swirled. He called me a fag in the hallway the next day. I confessed, kicking at a drift of snow. To save face, I guess. I let him. Elias stopped, turning me to face him with gentle hands on my shoulders. That wasn't on you. Prejudices like that. They're chains, not truths. His conviction steadied me, but doubt lingered. Easy to say when your family's the picture of progressive. Mine, Dad's idea of support was don't ask, don't tell applied to everything. We resumed walking, shoulders brushing, the city lights fracturing on the icy water like shattered promises. Friendship bloomed, tentative and true, but undercurrents stirred, glances that held too long, touches that sparked. One night, after a late screening of Moonlight at the Music Box Theater, we lingered on the sidewalk, the marquee's glow painting his face in reds and golds. That film. It's us, isn't it? He murmured, referring to the character's quiet yearnings. I nodded, throat tight. Yeah, the parts we don't say out loud. He stepped closer, our breaths mingling, and for a heartbeat, I thought he'd bridge the gap. But a car horn blared, jolting us apart. Timing, always the cruel editor. Unbeknownst to me, Elias was wrestling his own demons. His family, those polished North Shore elites, had layers of their own, expectations that choked like ivy. And I? My secrets were a ticking bomb, one letter away from detonation. Spring thawed Chicago's grip, turning the gray sludge to green shoots in the planters along Michigan Avenue. Elias and I fell into a deeper groove, our letters evolving from confessions to blueprints, plans for weekend hikes in the Indiana dunes, lazy afternoons at the Art Institute debating Pollock's chaos. He opened up about his queerness in fragments, a college fling with a visiting poet that ended in heartbreak when the guy ghosted after graduation, the relief of coming out to his brother over stolen beers in their garage, only for life to cut that joy short. He hugged me so hard I thought my ribs would crack, Elias said one afternoon, as we picnicked on the grass near the Bean, tourists orbiting us like satellites. Said, finally, Eli, now we can be us. I shared my fractures too, the way Mom's church friends whispered, pray for him, after my coming out, or how Jamie's confession had forced me to confront my asexuality and attraction. No, my fear of intimacy masquerading as disinterest. I pushed her away because I couldn't give her what she wanted, I admitted, tossing pebbles into the fountain. And part of me wondered if I'd ever want anyone that way. Elias listened without judgment, his presence a balm. Wanting isn't a checklist, Alex. It's a story you write together. Our bond deepened, but so did the undercurrents. Touches lingered, a hand on the small of my back guiding me through a crowded farmer's market, knees brushing under cafe tables. One evening, after volunteering at a Pride Prep event in Boys Town, stuffing envelopes for the parade, laughing over rainbow stickers, we wandered Halsted Street as dusk fell, bars pulsing with pre-celebration energy. Drag queens on platforms called out compliments, and the air hummed with possibility. Elias bought me a glow stick from a vendor, looping it around my neck like a talisman. For luck, he teased, but his eyes were serious, searching. We paused outside a club, bass thumping through the walls. Dance with me, he asked, half joking, but when I shook my head, crowd still made my skin crawl. He didn't push. Instead, he pulled me into a shadowed doorway, away from the throng. Then just this. He cupped my face, thumb tracing my jaw, and leaned in. The kiss was soft, exploratory, a question wrapped in warmth. My world tilted, senses flooding with him. The faint stubble on his chin, the vanilla trace on his lips, the way his sigh vibrated against mine. It lasted seconds, eternities, before we broke apart, foreheads resting together. Was that okay? He whispered, voice ragged. I nodded, breathless. More than. But as elation surged, so did fear, a whisper that this fragility couldn't last. We walked home in companionable silence, hands intertwined, but my mind raced. What if I ruined this like everything else? The first crack appeared a week later, innocuous as a misplaced bookmark. I'd stopped by the library unannounced, bearing takeout from our favorite Thai spot. Pad CEW still steaming in the bag. Elias was at the desk, but his smile was strained, eyes flicking to a man in a crisp suit hovering nearby. The guy was mid-40s, salt and pepper hair, exuding the polished aura of old money. Dad, Elias said tightly when I approached. This is Alex. Alex, my father, Richard Hart. Richard extended a hand, grip firm, assessing. Elias has mentioned you. The designer friend. The word friend landed like a polite barb, and I forced a grin. Guilty. Hope you're not here to drag him to some gala. Richard chuckled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Actually, yes. Family dinner tonight. Mother's been asking after him. Elias shifted, discomfort radiating. I told you I have plans. His father's brow arched. Plans that can't wait? Eli, it's been months. We need to talk about the foundation, the scholarship in your brother's name. The air thickened. I knew the foundation, a glossy tribute to Marcus Hart, funding lit programs for underprivileged kids, all photo ops and tax write-offs. Elias had described it bitterly once, how it honored a ghost while ignoring the living. Alex and I were grabbing dinner, he said, but Richard's gaze slid over me dismissively. Bring him along. The more, the merrier. It was an order disguised as invitation. That night, the Hart estate loomed on Lake Forest's manicured shores, a colonial behemoth with columns like judgmental sentinels. Inside, crystal chandeliers dripped light over mahogany tables, and Mrs. Hart, Lillian, elegant in pearls, greeted us with air kisses. Elias, darling. And you must be the friend. Again, the label chafed. Dinner was a minefield. Talk of board meetings, summer homes in the Hamptons, veiled probes into my line of work. Graphic design, I said when asked. Freelance mostly. Richard nodded. Creative fields are volatile. Ever think of something stable? Elias tensed beside me, foot nudging mine under the table, a silent apology. But the Real bomb dropped over dessert when Lillian turned to him with feigned casualness. Eli, we've been fielding interest for the scholarship. That nice young woman from the dean's office, Sarah? Her family's in pharmaceuticals. Perfect match for the board's outreach. Elias's fork clattered. Mom, I'm gay. We've been over this. The room froze, silverware suspended. Richard cleared his throat. Son, it's about optics. The foundation's image. Optics. Elias's voice rose, raw. Marcus was gay too, Dad. And you buried that faster than his casket. Lillian's hand fluttered to her throat. Elias, language. This isn't about. It is, he cut in, standing so abruptly his chair scraped. It's always about appearances. Alex gets it. He's real, not some prop. He grabbed my arm, storming out, leaving stunned silence in our wake. In the car, speeding back to the city, he gripped the wheel white-knuckled. I'm sorry. There. Impossible. I placed a hand on his thigh, steadying. Hey, you stood up. That's huge. But doubt seated, his family's prejudice a mirror to my own fears. Were we building on sand? Days later, a letter arrived, and signed despite our pact. I can't drag you into this mess. Better to fade before it stains you. My stomach dropped. Fade? After everything? Panic clawed at me as I reread the note, the paper crinkling under my frantic fingers. Elias's apartment was a 15-minute L ride away, in a Ukrainian village walk-up with fire escapes tangled in ivy. I pounded on his door at dusk, the building's hallway smelling of cabbage and candle wax from neighboring Shabbat dinners. No answer. I buzzed again, calling his name through the wood. Finally, a shuffle, then the click of locks. He looked wrecked, hair disheveled, eyes red-rimmed behind smudged glasses, wearing the same sweater from 2 days ago. Go away, Alex, he mumbled, but I shouldered past, the door banging shut behind me. His place was a bibliophile's dream. Books stacked to the ceiling, a typewriter on a scarred desk spilling half-finished pages. What the hell is this? I thrust the letter at him. He glanced, then away, sinking onto the sagging couch. What it says? My family's poison. Dinner proved it. You don't need that drama. I knelt before him, forcing his gaze. Drama? We're drama, Elias. The good kind, the kind that grows you. His laugh was hollow. You say that now, but I've seen it. Friends distance, lovers bolt. Marcus's boyfriend left weeks after the funeral. Said it was too heavy. The admission hung, laced with old pain. I cupped his face, thumbs brushing tears he hadn't let fall. I'm not leaving, but you don't get to decide for me. That's my choice. He leaned into my touch, a broken exhale escaping. I wrote that after they called. Dad left a voicemail. Don't embarrass us further. Mom texted Bible verses on tolerance. Like I'm a phase to pray away. Rage simmered in my veins, but I banked it for him. They're scared of losing control, but that's theirs, not ours. We talked until midnight, words tumbling like dominoes. His isolation post-Marcus, how the library became sanctuary, my own isolation post-Dad, when grief masked as stoicism. By dawn, the letter was ashes in his sink, our pact renewed. But fractures lingered. Work intruded, My freelance gig for a conservative ad agency soured when they axed a subtle rainbow motif from a diversity campaign. Too on the nose, the client sneered. I vented to Elias over beers at a dive in Pilsen, murals of Frida Kahlo watching Judgment Free. It's everywhere, I griped. Even allies pick and choose. He clinked his bottle to mine. Then we make our own spaces. Starting with this. He slid a key across the scarred table, his apartment. Not moving in. Just access. So you can crash when the L's delayed, or when you need quiet. The gesture undid me. That night, we christened the key with takeout and a marathon of Queer as Folk, laughing at the melodrama while stealing kisses that deepened with each episode. Intimacy unfolded slow, reverent. No rush, just explorations of collarbones and whispers in the dark. You're safe, he'd murmur, as if convincing us both. Summer scorched in, festivals blooming like defiant flowers. We hit Pitchfork Music Fest, sweat slicked in the crowd, his head on my shoulder during Bon Iver's set, lyrics of fractured love resonating. Afterward, at an after-party in a Logan Square warehouse, things soured. A guy, tall, tattooed, with a predatory grin, sidled up to Elias while I grabbed drinks. Heard you're the library ghost, the stranger drawled, arm draping casual over Elias's shoulders. Cute. Bet you read dirty limericks. Elias stiffened, shrugging him off, but the seed of unease planted. Later, in bed, I asked, "You okay?" He nodded too quickly. Just idiots. But the incident festered. Whispers followed, Elias's reticence painted as aloofness, my protectiveness as possessiveness. Jamie reappeared then, a curveball from my past. She'd moved back to Chicago for a marketing job, her text popping up mid-commute. Heard you're with someone? Coffee. Catch up. Guilt twisted. I'd owed her closure for years. I met her at our old haunt, the Billy Goat Tavern under the L tracks, where the No Pepsi sign still hung crooked. She looked good, curly hair tamed into waves, laugh lines softening her eyes. Alex Rivera, still brooding handsome. We hugged awkward, then dove in. I'm seeing someone, I said over goat cheese curds. Elias. He's everything. Her smile was genuine, but edged. Happy for you. Really? That college thing? I was projecting. Needed to figure my own shit. Relief washed, but she probed. So stable? Or one of those artsy types who vanishes? I bristled. He's solid. Librarian, volunteers. Deeper than you know. Jamie leaned in, voice low. Just watch the red flags. You deserve steady after Tyler's crap. Her concern chafed, echoing my fears. That night, I confessed the meet-up to Elias over dinner. His fork paused. Jamie? The crush. I nodded. Ancient history. But she made me think about us. Are we rushing? His face shuddered. If you need space. No. I cut in, reaching for him. Just honesty. We made love then. Urgent and affirming. But Dawn brought a new letter on my pillow. Not his script, but typed, anonymous. Ask your boyfriend about the letters he burns. Not all ghosts stay buried. Chills slithered down my spine. What secrets was Elias hiding? The anonymous note burned a hole in my pocket all day, its typed words mocking me from client meetings where I zoned out, doodling question marks on napkins. By evening, paranoia had rooted deep. Who could know about the burned letters? Elias's family? A jealous ex? I confronted him at his place, the key turning with the accusatory snick. He was at the stove, stirring risotto, humming off-key to a podcast on forgotten queer icons. Hey you, he greeted, pecking my cheek. Normal. Too normal. I waited until plates were cleared, wine poured, before sliding the note across the table. His color leached away, spoon clattering into the sink. Where did you get this? Mailbox. Unsigned. Care to explain? He slumped into a chair, rubbing temples. It's nothing. A prank. Probably from work, some kid messing around. But his evasion screamed lie. I pressed. Burned letters? Plural? You've been torching my mail. Hurt flared, hot and irrational. It's protection, he burst. Dad's been digging. Hired a PI after dinner. Found out about us. Sent warnings. End it or the foundation suffers. I burned them so you wouldn't worry. Rage and relief ward. A pie? Jesus, Elias. That's stalker level. He flinched. I know, but it's them, not me. I handled it. Handled, like discarding evidence. Trust cracked, hairline but there. No more secrets, I demanded. He nodded, eyes pleading. Promise. We salvaged the night with tentative touches, but the fracture lingered, a fault line waiting to shift. Fall gilded the city, leaves carpeting the paths of Humboldt Park where we walked off tensions. Elias threw himself into the library's LGBTQ archive project, digitizing yellowed pamphlets from Stonewall-era activists. This stuff, it's us, preserved, he'd say, scanning faded newsprint. I contributed designs for the exhibit posters, bold graphics of intertwined fists in rainbow hues. Pride lingered in aftershocks. A queer book fair at Women and Children First, where we browsed hand in hand, fingers tracing spines of novels like Giovanni's Room. But shadows encroached. Richard Hart called Elias during a design crunch. Voicemail left on speaker. Son, this phase, it's hurting the family. Think of Marcus's legacy. Elias deleted it mid-rant, but the barb stuck. Legacy. He scoffed later, pacing my apartment. They mean their reputation. I pulled him down, massaging knotted shoulders. Then we make our own. That sparked the idea, a podcast. Voices from the Stacks, anonymous stories of queer Chicagoans, tales of first loves, family rifts, triumphs snatched from jaws of defeat. Elias hosted, his voice a soothing timbre. I handled production, editing, and ambient library sounds. The first episode dropped to modest buzz, shared in online forums, picked up by local blogs. Listeners flooded in. A trans barista recounting misgendering horrors turned to empowerment. A lesbian couple's fight against adoption bias. Elias glowed, the project a lifeline. This is what Marcus would have loved, he told me one night, curled on the couch amid takeout containers, giving words to the wordless. Yet success bred envy. At a launch party in Andersonville, champagne flutes clinking amid fairy lights strung across a bookstore's rafters, trouble brewed. Jamie showed, invited via my loose lips, and cornered me by the dessert table. Proud of you, she said, hugging tight. But her eyes flicked to Elias across the room, charming a cluster of donors. He's good for you. Just. Intense, right? All that family drama. I stiffened. It's not drama. It's life. She backpedaled, but the seed sprouted doubt. Worse came from within. Elias's colleague, a sharp-tongued archivist named Theo, openly gay, flamboyantly out, pulled me aside during cleanup. Elias is gold, but fragile. Lost his brother, now this PI crap? He's spiraling. Watch him. Theo's concern rang true. I'd noticed Elias's insomnia, the way he'd stare at his phone, waiting for phantom calls. I'm trying, I admitted. Theo clapped my shoulder. Love's trying. But sometimes, you gotta push back. The push came violently. Mid-October, a package arrived at the library, addressed to Elias, no return. Inside, photocopies of his brother's letters, the unsent ones, annotated in red ink. Pathetic. Weak. And a note. Your blood runs the same. Keep playing house, or we expose it all. Elias collapsed in the break room, hyperventilating as I rushed over, called by a frantic coworker. It's them, he gasped when I arrived. Dad. He must have found the originals. I drove him home, fury boiling. We go to them. Now. He shook his head. Can't. The foundation. Screw the foundation. We argued, voices echoing in the empty car. This is abuse, Elias. Emotional blackmail. He curled inward. It's family. The words landed like slaps. Family. Mine had hurt too, but I'd drawn lines. Was his pain mine to fix, or was I enabling? That night, alone in my bed, the podcast's latest recording played on loop. A listener's story of cutting toxic ties. Freedom's messy, the voice said. But staying chained? That's death. Dawn broke with resolve. I drafted a letter, not to Elias, but to Richard Hart, typed in formal. Leave him alone, or the world hears about the Hart's true legacy. I didn't send it. Not yet. But secrets, like autumn leaves, have a way of scattering. November winds howled like accusations as Elias and I navigated the aftermath, our podcast gaining traction even as our foundation cracked. Episodes pulled record downloads. A non-binary teens coming out monologue went viral on TikTok, racking up shares from influencers in LA to allies in small-town Ohio. Invites poured in. Guest spots on WBZ, panels at the Chicago Humanities Festival. Elias thrived in the spotlight's glow, his once ghostly demeanor blooming into quiet charisma. "This is bigger than us," he'd say, reviewing listener mail, envelopes fat with handwritten testimonies, digital voicemails thick with sobs and triumphs. Yet the package haunted, a specter in our periphery. Elias reported it to library security, who shrugged it off as family squabble, but I pushed for more, a restraining order, therapy referrals. "I'm fine," he'd insist, but nightmares woke him, sweat-soaked and murmuring Marcus's name. One morning, over coffee in my kitchen, he broke. "What if they're right? That I'm broken. Like him." I set my mug down, heart fracturing. "You're not. You're healing. We both are." I pulled him close, our embrace a dam against the flood. But doubt whispered, was I strong enough for this storm? Complications layered. Jamie, ever the fixer, suggested a double date. Her new girlfriend, a yoga instructor named Riley with the infectious laugh and zero filter. "Neutral ground," she texted. "Clear the air." We met at a fondue spot in River North. Cheese bubbling like our bubbling tensions. Riley dove in fearlessly. "So, podcasts?" Spill, hottest listener story. Elias relaxed, recounting a widow's tale of rediscovering love post-loss. Jamie watched me sidelong, her earlier words unspoken but present. Midway, she pulled me to the restroom line. "He's good for you, Alex. But that intensity, don't lose yourself." I bristled. "I'm not." Yet her mirror held truth. I'd canceled 2 client pitches for his crises, my inbox bloating with ignored deadlines. The climax brewed at the Humanities Festival, a glittering affair in the Hilton's ballroom, chandeliers dripping light over velvet ropes, luminaries in tuxes and gowns mingling with activists in protest pins. Our panel, Queer Narratives, From Margins to Mainstream, drew a packed house, moderator a NPR host with a velvet voice. Elias spoke eloquently on archives as activism, his passion electric. I moderated visuals, projecting listener art, poignant sketches of hidden hands holding. Q&A surged, questions on intersectionality, on trans erasure. Then, from the back row, a voice sliced through. "How do you reconcile personal drama with public advocacy? Or is it all performative?" The room hushed. Richard Hart stood, suit impeccable, Lillian at his elbow, faces masks of concern. Elias paled, microphone trembling in his grip. "Dad, son," Richard intoned, stepping to the aisle. "This spectacle, it's undignified." Marcus wouldn't. "Marcus is dead because you couldn't handle him." Elias exploded, voice cracking over the speakers. Gasps rippled. "You buried his truth, and now mine? No more." He stormed the stage edge, tears streaming. "These stories, they're real. We're real." Chaos erupted, flashes popping, murmurs swelling. I leaped up, wrapping an arm around him as security hovered. Richard advanced, face thunderous. "Elias, enough. Come home." But Elias turned to the crowd, voice steadying. "This is my family. You all. The voices we amplify." Applause thundered, defiant. Lillian tugged Richard back, whispering fiercely, but the damage was seismic. Backstage, Elias collapsed into my arms, sobs racking. "It's over. They'll cut me off." I held him. Then we rebuild. But as we exited to a swarm of reporters, "Mr. Hart, is this about the Foundation scandal?" A figure emerged from the shadows. Theo, Elias's colleague, holding a USB drive. "Found this in the archives. Backup of your brother's originals, unredacted. Sent to you anonymously weeks ago." Elias stared, then me. The package. It was a warning. Someone inside knew. Betrayal bit deep. Who? The panel's adrenaline crashed into suspicion. That night, over whiskey in a dim Gold Coast lounge, we dissected. Theo? A rival archivist jealous of the podcast? Or worse, Jamie, with her probing questions? "Paranoia helps no one," Elias said, but his eyes betrayed fear. Resolution dawned unexpectedly. A listener email pinged at 3 a.m. I'm the sender. Marcus's old boyfriend, back in town. Found the letters in storage. Your folks never knew I kept copies. Wanted to expose their hypocrisy, but seeing you fight. Keep going. Burn the hate. Attached, scans proving the Hart's cover-up of Marcus's orientation in Foundation docs. We didn't expose. Instead, Elias confronted them alone, at the estate, returning the originals with a single line. Honor him truly, or lose us both. Richard's call came days later, gruff, broken. We're funding the podcast. Doubled. No strings. Apology by proxy, but a start. Elias hung up, tears of release. It's not forgiveness. It's freedom. Winter blanketed Chicago in hush, our scars silvering to strength. Letters resumed. Signed. Shared. No burns. On New Year's, atop the Willis Tower skydeck, city sprawled like a promise below. Elias knelt. Not with rings, but a notebook. Our story, he said, pages filled with our words, sketches of futures. Write the next chapter with me? I pulled him up, kissing fierce against the glass. Every page. In the quiet librarian who'd seen my secrets, I'd found my mirror, my muse. And in that reflection, love, not despite the drama, but through it, endured.